All right, welcome to another video, you guys. Today's video is going to be slightly different. It's more of a history thing, and I've been looking up a lot of stuff lately, so I want to get into something. Okay, this is about zealots. All right, someone who is very zealous for the things of Yah. So we're going to start with the very first zealot that the Bible speaks about, and it's Phinehas. And I'm looking up, him. I think this is encyclopedia, I think. So it says Phinehas of the Bible was a grandson of Aaron and great nephew of Moses. He is famous for his zealotry in slaying Zimri, the licentious leader of the tribe of Simeon, thus halting a deadly divine sent plague afflicting the Jewish nation. As a reward, he was granted priesthood according to midrashic sources. Phinehas is the same persona as Elijah the prophet. All right, so let's look at his lineage. Phinehas was the son of Eleazar and grandson of Aaron the high priest. The verse describes Phinehas' mother as being from among the daughters of Putiel. The Talmud explains this to mean that she was a descendant of both Joseph, son of Jacob, and Jethro, father-in-law of Moses. All right. So on one side they were priests, and on the other side, of course, Jacob, Israel. All right, so let's look at what a zealot is. All right, so this is Google AI overview. And it says, the Zealots were a fiercely nationalistic first-century Jewish political movement in the Roman province of Judea, driven by intense religious zeal and a refusal to recognize any earthly ruler but Yah. They incited armed rebellions to expel the Roman Empire, most notably starting the First Jewish-Roman War in 66 CE. All right, so let's see. We'll read that in a second. All right, and Britannica says a zealot is a member of a Jewish sect noted for its uncompromising opposition to pagan Rome and the polytheism it professed. The Zealots were an aggressive political party whose concern for the national and religious life of the Jewish people led them to despise even Jews who sought peace and reconciliation with the Roman authorities. A census of Galilee ordered by Rome in AD 6 spurred the Zealots to rally the populace to non-compliance on the grounds that agreement was an implicit acknowledgement by Jews of the right of pagans to rule their nations. All right, extremists among the Zealots turned to terrorism and assassination and became known as Sakari. They frequent, which means daggermen, for the little daggers that they had tucked in their sleeves. They frequented public spaces with hidden daggers to strike down persons friendly to Rome. In the first revolt against Rome, AD 66 through 70, the Zealots played a leading role at Masada in 73. They committed suicide rather than surrender the fortress, but they were still a force to be reckoned with in the first part of the following century. All right. A few scholars see a possible relationship between the Zealots and the Jewish religious community mentioned in the Dead Sea Scroll. All right, so let's go to, I think this is Wikipedia. It says the Zealots were a radical Jewish political and religious movement in the first century Judea, driven by fierce nationalism and belief that God was their only true ruler. They violently opposed the Roman occupation and targeted Jewish collaborators, ultimately sparking the first Jewish-Roman War in 66 CE. All right, so it says the sect was documented by the first century Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, who I cannot stand. I do not like Josephus. He did everything to pander to the Romans. He was a Jew. He was a Hebrew. but he wanted to be Roman so bad. He wrote a book about all the traits of the Hebrews, and the Romans used that to hunt them down wherever they went. All right, so for that reason, I can't stand Josephus, but he was a historian, and he wrote down absolutely everything. Okay. So, to understand who they were, look at how they compared to other sects of the era. The Zealots responded to Roman taxation and imperial worship with direct guerrilla warfare and armed revolt. The Pharisees favored a strict interpretation of the Torah, but were largely passive regarding Rome. The Sadducees, the wealthy elite who accommodated Roman rule to preserve their own status, and the Essenes withdrew completely from society into the desert to maintain their religious purity. Okay. At the core of Zealot movement was the concept of zeal for God's law, heavily inspired by zealous biblical figures like Phinehas and Elijah. The movement began to take an organized. Okay, I already read that in the other spot. So what I want to show about this that is different, all right? And here it is. It says their legacy, the Zealots' legacy, all right? So, like I said, they started in 6th century CE, and it went all the way until 73 CE, right? The fall of Jerusalem was in 70 CE, and they kept fighting Rome kept going after the Hebrews, even after the fall of Jerusalem. So they continued to try to stomp out and kill all of anybody who went against their rule. Okay, so these Zealots, they lasted until 70 CE when they all just killed themselves instead of being under Roman rule. All right, so but before that, and I found this interesting, it says their legacy also appears in the New Testament, notably Simon the Zealot, aka Simon the Canaanite, one of Jesus Christ's 12 apostles. Okay. So the whole purpose of this video is to show how Phinehas started with zeal for the things of Yah. Okay. And then they never forgot about him, and he inspired these people. All right. But one thing I found that I liked about this group, you only had two choices: the Zealots and the Essenes. They were your only two choices in life back then. The Zealots responded, I'm just going to read this again. The Zealots responded to Roman taxation and imperial worship. You get that? The Catholic Church started from being the Pharisees and being the high priests and the governors over Israel. Okay? And they expected everyone to worship Yah or worship the Roman gods the way the Romans wanted them to. Okay? There's something else about the Romans. I'm going to go back and I'm going to look for it because I have it in these notes. I took a bunch of screenshots, so I'm just kind of flipping through screenshots right now to find, the information I'm looking for. But I'm going to get to that in just a second. So, responded to Roman taxation and imperial worship with direct guerrilla warfare and armed revolt. So they were one of the first people to do guerrilla warfare. All right. I know a lot of times we talk about like the Native Americans engaged in guerrilla warfare and a few other people engaged in warfare. That wasn't the first time guerrilla warfare was used, and this probably isn't the first time it's used, but I would say it's one of the first times I've ever seen it written or seen it talked about in the ancient times. Okay. Pharisees favored a strict interpretation of the Torah, but were largely passive regarding Rome. The Pharisees, I would liken them to like the NAACP, the Masons, the fraternities and sororities in black society. I would say they're more like those groups, because those groups, they try to climb the ladder, the social ladder, as best they can, while working with, people, who rule over them. the Sadducees, wealthy elite who accommodated Roman rule to preserve their own status. Well, let me back up. Okay, what I said for the Pharisees, I would say the Pharisees would be more like pastors, teachers, and preachers. They're not really doing anything for the people. But the Sadducees, I would say they're like the NAACP. They're like the Masons, and they're like the Divine Nine. Okay? Because they only care really about their own status. All right? The Essenes withdrew completely from society into the desert to maintain their religious purity. But they were not safe because Rome hunted them down, because no matter where they went, the writings of Josephus proved to kind of point them out no matter where they went. Okay? So your only options back then were to fight back or run. It's really your only two options. But there was something else in here that I wanted to share. And it was about, I know what it was about. I don't have the screenshot. I don't have the screenshot in here, but the thing is, Rome was a polytheistic nation. They did not believe in Yahweh. They did not believe in the God of the Hebrews. Okay, they had their own gods, but they wanted to rule over the Hebrews. But the Hebrews, they of course believe in only one God. They do not have a pantheon of gods, and they, of course, the Hebrews were taught by Yah to put him first and foremost, and you don't go against Yah. And what I find interesting is that even though Rome understood this, they still pushed themselves on the Hebrew people. All right. So from the 6th century all the way up to the 6th CE, all the way up to 70 CE. All right. Then you have one of Yeshua's own disciples was from this group of people. All right. Most people don't realize that Yahushua had a lot of like these young shooters as his disciples. Okay. He had Simon Peter, who carried a sword, who cut the ear off of one of the centurions, that came to capture Yeshua. All right. You had the sons of Thunder, who were sons of Thunder, aka sons of Wrath. They were all about the drama. They were all about fighting. They were all about all of that. Okay. They very militant young men. All right. I probably liken them to like the Black Panther Party. And then you had this guy, Simon the Zealot. He was part of the Zealots. Yeshua had 4 out of the 12 who were certified killers or certified young people who nowadays they'll be called YNs. Okay. They were with it. Okay. But this lets you know the type of people that Yah loves. He loves people who are zealous for him, who don't care about the rules, who don't care about what you're supposed to do, what society says to do. We're taught now to be these pushovers. Okay, we have been so conquered that now we've been pushovers. But through learning and through understanding what actually happened in history as well as in the Bible, we putting together a understanding that Yah expects us to be obedient to his voice and only his voice, and push out everything else that tries to tell us this is how you need to be, this is how you need to be. Okay, we're afraid to push back nowadays. We're afraid to say no, I don't want to do that. If our job tells us you got to work Saturday, a lot of us, we won't like it, but we'll go along with it, because we don't see much choice. We don't see where we have a choice in the matter. We gotta do what we gotta do. But when you think about the mentality of the type of people that Yahushua kept around him, Yahushua will be considered one of these, kind of old heads who never really grew up. He will be considered like that, because he hung around with these young shooters, these young cats who they just didn't care. They're rebellious. I know I mentioned in a video, I might have been talking to the wife or something. I know I mentioned in a video that about the young people in Memphis when the National Guard went to Memphis. They were so courageous and so uncaring. They stole multiple military vehicles, okay, and paraded them around the hood. They weren't afraid. They weren't thinking somebody's gonna come back and get me and hurt me. They just saw it as an opportunity to flex on everybody else in the country, to say we're the baddest. Nobody can top us. We've done something that none of y'all would dare to do. And Yahushua kept these mentality young people around him. Remember in the video I said that young people should not lead, but those same young people that are full of fire, they're amazing at followers. They're amazing followers. That's why the military loves them. The United States military is full of them. The Army and the Marines, they're full of them, because they don't care. They just don't care. Okay? But I wanted you guys to see that starting with Phinehas doing something that Yah told them to do, okay, that encouraged this. It encouraged many years later this type of zealousness. Now, what does that mean for us now? Am I saying we should have this type of zeal? Yes, we should, but in a different way. Not to go out and attack people, not to go out and harm people, but to be able to push the world around us back and say, no, you're not going to, I'm not going to cross this line right here. I'm faithful to the last breath. I'm going to be faithful to my Yah. I'm going to be faithful to my El, to his word, his commands. And Yah expects that type of person. There's two type of people. And before I got on here, I was sitting back just thinking about it. There's two type of people. You have an Esau and you have a Jacob. You have someone who is more inclined to the things of the world, and they're more susceptible to become addicted to things of the world. Okay? And then you have people who are more in tune towards the spirit. All right? Jacob, I can't say he was a good person, because he swindled his brother multiple times and got over on him multiple times. But he slowed himself down, and he was able to go strictly to the spiritual side and leave back the worldly side. Esau, he didn't know how to tap into the spiritual. He was more in tune on what he felt and what he wanted, what he desired. He was almost, you could say, a slave to his desires, a slave to his to what he saw he wanted. Okay, there's two types of people. These zealots, they are the type of people who are more spiritual, very spiritual. Paul was a zealot. Okay, Paul was this type of Pharisee who had a zeal to go out and punish anybody who disobeyed the Pharisees. Okay, he was a very spiritual sided person. But then you have people like Judas. He was a worldly Edomite type person, Esau type of person, because he saw everything from a worldly standpoint. Even though he can operate in the spirit, he ultimately chose the worldly things, money, power, whatever it took to succeed, a real hustler type of person. And it was his downfall. So when we think about this, think about the type of people that Yahushua wants around him, the type of people that the Father wants around him. Because Phinehas did that for the Father. Okay? Then you have Peter, who cut off the ear for Yahushua. All right? So you have those types of people. Think about the type of person that Yah wants around him. Think about the type of person you are. As I think about the type of person I am, I was told at the beginning of my walk that I was evil by Yah, that I was evil. And I was Esau. I had an Esau spirit. And I understand that now. I can see it when it comes out. I can recognize when my impulsiveness gets the best of me. A lot of it is I want to eat whatever I want to eat. And I want what I want. And a lot of times I can't shake it. I'm very impulsive. I get a check and I can't wait to spend it on the people I love, on the things I love. I can't wait to spend it. I'll spend it all. I don't care. My philosophy is swipe it until it stops swiping, until it rejects. It's not a good way to be, but it's funny. I laugh at it because that's me. I know that's me. I know I'm impulsive. I know, I'm addicted. I'm push away addictions. I've had to push away things and fight things, and that's just the life of a person like me. But Yah, in his amazingness, he didn't just say you're evil and you can't come, you can't participate. He said you can participate, but you're gonna fight. You gotta fight. And he even told me, even if it feels like you're going to die, still go. So that's what we're doing. And we're reconsidering who we are, what we are, and how do we how are we seen by our God, our El? Okay? What type of person he wants around him. And we got to be that. I'm a very, to myself, I'm more of like the Essene type of person. I'd rather just leave society. I'd rather just walk away. I'd rather just say, forget it. But because of things like the parables of the talents, I don't want to bury my talent. I don't want to be one of those that I bury my talent and Yah says, nah, you're evil because you buried your talent. So I'll stay out and I'll do what I gotta do. I'll stay faithful to the last breath. No matter how many times I fall, I'll keep getting back up, keep going. And hey, that's life. That's life for us. But I just wanted to, talk about this because I found it interesting. And then I found it very interesting that Simon the Zealot, was part of Yahushua's 12. And then I started thinking about other ones and realized a quarter of them were these young, and there's probably more, but we just don't know enough about them. They were very quiet. They didn't say much about them in the Word. But I would like to find out more about them, because I'm sure there are probably more. But if you think of like a quarter of Yeshua's trusted people were these young shooter type people, these YN type people, you could imagine a quarter of the people now are going to have that same attitude. Okay? Of course, he's going to have some quiet ones that's just going to play the background and never make a sound, just go along with whatever Yah says, but never really, never make a ripple in the water, so to speak. But hey, I want to be what Yah calls, what he likes, I want to be. And it goes against my nature to be quiet. I want a quiet person. I love just to sit in silence, sit in quietness, or flip through YouTube, or listen to music. I love that. I don't have to say a word. I ain't got to talk all day. If I don't have to, I'm good. But, Yah wants us to be zealous for him and his law. All right, that's all. See you on the next video. Have a great one.